The massive warship hung in the darkness of space like a wounded beast. Its hull was covered in battle scars, and smoke still rose from holes in its armor. Inside, Alpha Vornak stood at the viewing window and watched the small, human space station grow larger as his ship moved closer. He was a Velrith. His people looked like wolves that walked on two legs. They stood 8 feet tall with thick gray fur, yellow eyes, and claws that could tear through metal. For 10,000 years, the Velrith had conquered world after world. They were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Everyone feared them, but fear could not save them now. Vornak closed his eyes and remembered his homeworld burning. The crystalline hegemony had come with their ships made of living crystal. Their weapons turned Velrith warriors into dust. Their armies never tired, never stopped, never showed mercy. The Velrith fought back with all their strength, but strength alone was not enough. The crystallines had surrounded the Velrith homeworld. They were slowly crushing it. Vornak's people were dying, and he did not know how to save them. His people were warriors. They knew how to fight, how to hunt, how to kill. But they did not know how to build walls that could stop crystalline weapons. They did not know how to create shields or design defensive systems. For 10,000 years, they had taken what they needed from others. They had never learned to create anything themselves, now that weakness would destroy them. Vornak turned away from the window. Behind him stood his 3 cubs. They were young, barely adults by Velrith standards. Renok was the eldest, tall and proud with dark gray fur. He tried to look brave, but Vornak could smell his fear. Talus was the middle child, smaller than her brother, with curious eyes that were always watching everything. And Vora was the youngest, shy and quiet, hiding slightly behind her siblings. They were everything to him. And he was about to leave them with strangers. The ship docked with the human station. Vornak led his cubs through the metal corridors until they reached a large room filled with machines and tools. Humans moved everywhere, working on strange devices, studying glowing screens, welding pieces of metal together. Humans were small creatures. They had no claws, no fangs, no thick fur to protect them. A single Velrith warrior could kill 10 of them without effort. And yet, somehow humans had spread across the galaxy. They built things that other species could not imagine. Their space stations, their ships, their weapons, all were works of incredible skill. A human male walked toward them. He was average height for his kind, with black hair and calm eyes. He wore simple work clothes covered in grease and burn marks. "I am Kandoyan," he said. His voice was steady, showing no fear despite standing before creatures that could tear him apart. "I run this engineering academy." "You must be Alpha Vornak," Vornak nodded. "I am. These are my cubs." Doyan looked at the 3 young Velrith. His expression did not change. "You want us to train them as engineers?" "Yes, why?" Vornak's claws tightened. The question hurt his pride. But pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. "Because my people are dying. We are warriors. We know nothing of building, of creating, of designing defenses. The crystallines are destroying us because we cannot protect ourselves. We can only attack, and attacking is not enough." A human female appeared beside Doyun. She was shorter, with long black hair tied behind her head. Her hands were rough from work, and her eyes were sharp and intelligent. "I am Yoon Hemi," she said. "Structural specialist." She looked at the cubs with an expression Vornak could not read. "They are young. They are all I can give," Vornak said. "My warriors are needed at home. But my cubs, they are smart. They can learn." He paused. "They must learn." Hemi studied the cubs for a long moment. Vora shrank back from her gaze. Talus stared back with curiosity. Renok growled softly, trying to look threatening. "Training takes years," Doyun said. "Engineering is not something learned in a few months. Then teach them what you can. Anything, everything." Vornek reached into his belt and pulled out a data chip. I offer payment. Coordinates to mineral deposits worth more than this entire station. Rare metals, crystals, everything humans value. It is yours if you teach my cubs. Doyun took the chip but did not look at it. He was still watching the cubs. This is not about payment. Then what is it about? Hemi answered. It is about whether they want to learn. Engineering cannot be forced. It requires patience, curiosity, the willingness to fail and try again. Can Velruth do that? Your people are known for conquest, not creation. Rennek stepped forward, his young voice full of anger. We can do anything humans can do. Hemi did not step back. She did not even blink. Can you sit still for 6 hours studying mathematics? Can you fail a test and not destroy the room? Can you accept that a creature half your size knows more than you? Rennek's fur bristled. For a moment, Varnek thought his son would attack. But then Talus put her hand on her brother's arm. We can learn, Talus said quietly. We have to. Hemi looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. We will try. Vornek felt something release in his chest. He turned to face his cubs. This was the moment he had been dreading. He lowered himself to his knees, bringing his eyes level with theirs. In Velruth culture, an alpha never kneeled. It was a sign of submission, of weakness. But these were his children, and he needed them to understand. I must return to the war, he said. I do not know if I will survive. But you must learn everything these humans can teach you. Not for me. Not for our pride. For our people. Our future depends on what you learn here. Vora's eyes filled with tears. She rushed forward and pressed her face against his chest. Vornek held her, then pulled Talus and Rennek into the embrace as well. Be brave, he whispered. Be patient. Be better than we were. Then he stood and walked away. He did not look back. If he looked back, he would not be able to leave. The cubs stood alone in the strange human place. Machines hummed around them. Humans watched them with curious eyes. Everything smelled wrong, felt wrong. They were surrounded by creatures they had been raised to see as prey. Rennek looked at a welding torch on a nearby table. He reached for it, and it sparked to life, making him jump back with a startled growl. Hemi appeared beside him. She picked up a pair of safety goggles and held them out to him. First lesson, she said. Fire does not care how sharp your claws are. Put these on. Rennek stared at the goggles. They looked ridiculous. They were made for human faces, not Velruth. But Hemi's eyes held no mockery, only patience. Slowly, Rennek took the goggles and put them on. Their training had begun. 6 months passed on the orbital station. For the 3 Velruth cubs, it felt like 6 years. Rennek sat in the small classroom, staring at numbers on the screen in front of him. His head hurt. His eyes burned. The chair was too small for his body, and his tail kept getting caught in the metal frame. Around him, human students worked quietly, their small fingers moving quickly over their tablets. The teacher, a young woman named Park Jion, stood at the front of the room. She was even younger than Hemi, barely an adult by human standards, but she was said to be brilliant. Her voice was soft and patient as she explained load-bearing calculations for the third time. Rennek understood none of it. Back home, education meant learning to hunt. It meant tracking prey through dark forests, fighting other cubs to prove strength, and listening to elders tell stories of great conquests. Sitting in a room, staring at numbers, calculating how much weight a beam could hold before breaking, this was torture. The answer is simple, Jian said. You take the cross-sectional area, multiply it by the material strength, and divide by the safety factor. Rennek, would you like to try? All eyes turned to him. The human students tried to hide their smiles. They had watched him fail again and again over the past months. Some of them no longer bothered to hide their amusement. Rennock looked at the problem on his screen. The numbers swam before his eyes. He punched in an answer, knowing it was wrong before he even finished. The screen flashed red. Incorrect. Gian sighed softly. Perhaps we can try again after class. Rennock's claws dug into the desk, leaving deep scratches in the metal. Shame burned in his chest. He was the son of an alpha. His ancestors had conquered 100 worlds. And he could not solve a simple math problem that human children finished in seconds. After class, he found himself alone in the workshop. A practice model sat on the table in front of him, a small structure made of metal beams that he was supposed to have built correctly. It was his third attempt. Like the first two, it was wrong. The beams were crooked. The joints were weak. It would collapse under its own weight. Rennock stared at it. Then, with a roar of frustration, he smashed it with his fist. Metal pieces flew across the room. One of them hit the wall hard enough to leave a dent. Feel better? Rennock spun around. An older human male stood in the doorway. His name was Cho Min-sik. He was one of the senior engineers, a gruff man with gray hair and scarred hands. He had spent the past 6 months ignoring the cubs, treating them like furniture. What do you want? Rennock growled. Min-sik walked into the room. He picked up one of the broken metal pieces and examined it. You bent this with your bare hands. Impressive strength. Terrible engineering. I do not need your mockery. I am not mocking you. Min-sik sat down on a workbench. I am observing. You have failed 17 tests in 6 months. You have destroyed 4 practice models. You have made no progress at all. Why are you still here? Rennock felt his fur bristle. Because my father ordered me to stay. Is that the only reason? The question caught Rennock off guard. He thought of his homeworld, burning under crystalline attacks. He thought of his father, fighting a war they were losing. He thought of his people, dying because they did not know how to build walls that could protect them. No, he admitted. I stay because my people need what you know. Min-sik nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. He pressed a button, and a hologram appeared in the air between them. It showed a bridge. A beautiful human bridge, stretching across a wide river. As Rennock watched, the bridge began to shake. Then suddenly, it collapsed. Pieces of metal and stone fell into the water. Vehicles dropped into the river. People screamed and died. Tacoma Narrows Bridge, Min-sik said. Collapsed in 1940 on Earth. The engineers did not understand how wind would affect the structure. They made a mistake, and people died. The hologram changed. Now it showed a tall building. The building swayed, then crumbled, falling into a cloud of dust and debris. Ronan Point Tower. 1968. A gas explosion on one floor caused the entire building to collapse. The design was flawed. More images appeared. Rockets exploding. Dams breaking. Ships sinking. Each time, Min-sik explained what went wrong. A calculation error. A material weakness. A design flaw that no one noticed until it was too late. We have failed thousands of times, Min-sik said. Every piece of engineering knowledge we have was bought with failure. With death. With destruction. He looked at Rennock with steady eyes. Failure is the first material we build with. If you cannot accept that, you will never be an engineer. Rennock stared at the holograms. He had always thought of humans as weak because they were small and soft. But now he saw something different. He saw a species that had faced failure again and again and refused to stop trying. How do you keep going? He asked, after so many failures? Min-sik smiled, a rare expression on his stern face. Because the next bridge might stand. The next building might save lives. The next design might change everything. We keep going because giving up is not an option. That night, Renok returned to the workshop. He did not smash anything. Instead, he sat down and started building another practice model. His first attempt failed. So did his second. But on his third try, something clicked. The beams aligned correctly. The joints held strong. It was a small thing. A tiny model that a human child could have built in an hour. But for Renok, it was a beginning. Meanwhile, Talus had found her own path. She discovered the power systems lab by accident, wandering through the station late one night when she could not sleep. The room was filled with glowing energy cores, humming generators, and beautiful displays of controlled lightning. She fell in love instantly. Gyeon found her there 3 nights later, running simulations on the computer. Talus's eyes were bright with excitement, her fur practically glowing with joy. "You should be sleeping," Jian said. "I cannot stop," Talus replied. "Do you know how beautiful this is? The way energy flows, the way it can be directed and controlled. It is like water, but faster. Like fire, but tame. I never knew such things existed." Jian sat down beside her. "You have a gift for this. I want to learn everything. How to build generators. How to create shields. How to power entire cities." Talus turned to look at her teacher. "Will you teach me?" Jian smiled. "I will teach you everything I know." And in a quiet corner of the station, Vora found her own kind of strength. She was not bold like Renok or curious like Talus. She was shy and scared and missed her father terribly. But Hami saw something in her that the others missed. "You draw beautifully," Hami said one day, looking at Vora's notebook. The young Velruth had been sketching, filling pages with designs that mixed engineering blueprints with traditional Velruth arc patterns. Vora's ears flattened with embarrassment. "It is just foolishness." "No." Hemi took the notebook and studied it carefully. "These patterns you add, they are not just decoration. Look here, you have instinctively created modular connection points. These designs could be assembled and disassembled easily. This is practical. I do not understand." Hemi sat down beside her. "Engineering is not just about numbers and calculations. It is about seeing how things fit together. You have an eye for that. You see patterns that others miss." For the first time since arriving at the station, Vora smiled. Months passed. The cubs began eating meals with human students. They learned to laugh at human jokes. They formed study groups. Renok stopped growling at everyone who looked at him wrong. Talus started teaching other students about Velruth culture. Vora's designs appeared on the walls of the common room. Admired by humans and Velruth alike. They were changing, growing, becoming something new. Then the distress signal arrived. The message came in the middle of the night, waking everyone on the station. It was from the Velruth homeworld. The siege had intensified. The crystalline forces were pushing harder than ever. The Velruth defenses were failing, and at the end of the message, a single line that made the cubs' blood run cold. "Alpha Vornek's fleet is falling. We do not expect him to survive." The communication room was dark except for the blue glow of the hologram projector. The 3 cubs stood together, their bodies tense, their hearts pounding. Around them, the human engineers watched in silence. Then the hologram flickered to life, and Alpha Vornek appeared before them. He looked terrible. His once proud fur was matted with blood and ash. A deep wound ran across his face, barely healed. His armor was cracked and burned. Behind him, through a shattered window, the cubs could see their homeworld on fire. Ships exploded in the sky. Crystalline weapons rained down like deadly stars. "My cubs," Vornek said. His voice was tired, but still strong. "I am glad to see you one more time." "Father." Vora rushed toward the hologram, forgetting for a moment that she could not touch him. Her hands passed through the blue light. "I do not have much time," Vornek continued. The crystallines have broken through our outer defenses. We are falling back to the capital city, but we cannot hold it for long. Our walls are too weak. Our shields fail too quickly. We do not know how to build what we need to survive. Rennek stepped forward. Father, tell us what to do. We will come home. We will fight beside you. Vornik shook his head. No, you must stay where you are. Learn, survive. When this war is over, our people will need leaders who know how to build a better future. He paused, and something like pride flickered in his yellow eyes. I have heard reports of your progress. Your teachers say you are learning well. I am proud of you. We do not want your pride, Talus said, her voice breaking. We want you to live. Some things are not within our power to choose. Vornik looked at each of his cubs in turn, memorizing their faces. I love you. Remember that. Whatever happens, remember that I love you more than conquest, more than glory, more than my own life. The hologram flickered. The connection was failing. Father, wait! Rennek shouted, but Vornik was gone. The projector went dark, leaving only the echo of his words hanging in the cold air. For a long moment, no one moved. The cubs stood frozen, their grief too large for words. Then Rennek turned to face the human engineers. His eyes were burning with something beyond sadness. It was determination, fierce and unbreakable. No, he said. We will not sit here and wait for our father to die. Dohyun stepped forward. What do you propose? You are students, not soldiers. You cannot fight this war. We cannot fight it, Talus said slowly, her mind already working. But perhaps we can build something that can. Hemi looked at her with sudden interest. What are you thinking? Our father said their walls are too weak, their shields fail too quickly. What if we designed something better? Something strong enough to withstand crystalline weapons. Something our warriors could build quickly, even under attack. Impossible, Minsik said. Designing such a system would take months. Building it would take longer. Your homeworld does not have that kind of time. Then we work faster, Vora said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her, surprised. She was always the quiet one, the shy one. But now her voice was steady. We designed something simple. Something modular. Something that Velroth warriors can assemble without engineering training. We use what we have learned here and combine it with what we know about our people. Jian nodded slowly. Modular construction. Snap-together components. If the pieces are simple enough, even untrained workers could assemble them. And if we use Velroth building materials, Rennek added. Resources they already have, they would not need to wait for supplies. The human engineers exchanged glances. What the cubs were proposing was insane. Designing a revolutionary defense system in a matter of days, one that could be built by warriors who knew nothing about engineering. It had never been done before. Dohyun was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. Gather everyone. We have work to do. What followed was the longest 72 hours of their lives. The main workshop was transformed into a war room. Holographic displays covered every wall, showing blueprints, calculations, and simulations. Human engineers and Velroth cubs worked side by side, sleeping in shifts, eating at their stations, pushing their minds and bodies to the limit. Rennek focused on structural design. He remembered every failure, every collapsed model, every lesson about load-bearing and material stress. Now he used that knowledge to design walls that could bend without breaking, absorb crystalline energy blasts, and redirect the force into the ground. You are overcomplicating this, Hemi said. Looking at his latest design. It needs to be strong enough to survive heavy bombardment. Strong, yes. But also simple. Look here, she pointed to a section of his blueprint. These reinforcement beams require precision welding. Velroth warriors will not have time for that. Replace them with interlocking segments. Cruder, but faster to assemble. Rennek studied her suggestion. She was right. He had been designing like a human engineer, not like a Velrith warrior. He needed to find the balance between both worlds. Meanwhile, Talus worked on power systems. The Velrith had generators, but they were old and inefficient. Crystalline weapons overloaded them easily. She designed a new power network, one that distributed energy across multiple nodes, so that no single strike could bring down the entire system. "This is elegant," Jian said, reviewing her work. "But where will they get the components?" "Salvage," Talus replied. "Every crashed ship, every destroyed building, it all contains power cells and conductors. I have designed this system to use whatever is available. It will not be pretty, but it will work." And Vora, Quiet Vora, became the heart of the project. Her artistic eye saw what others missed. She created modular designs that clicked together like puzzle pieces. Even warriors who had never held a tool could understand her simple visual instructions. "Build this piece. Connect it to that piece. Repeat until the wall is complete." "These patterns," Minsick said, studying her work with new respect. "They are beautiful." "Beauty serves a purpose," Vora replied. "When my people see these patterns, they will know that this is Velrith work. It will give them courage." On the third day, they gathered to review the complete design. They called it the Fang Protocol, named after the sharp tooth-like shape of the defensive modules. Each stronghold was a self-contained fortress, capable of housing hundreds of defenders, resisting crystalline attacks, and providing its own power and life support. The blueprints were unlike anything ever created. They combined human engineering precision with Velrith warrior instincts. They were simple enough for untrained workers to build, but sophisticated enough to withstand the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. Do-Yoon examined the final design in silence. The room held its breath. "This might actually work," he said finally. The blueprints were transmitted immediately. Across the vast distance of space, the data streamed toward the Velrith homeworld. They could only hope it would arrive in time. Hours later, a response came. Alpha Vornek's face appeared once more, but this time his expression was different. The exhaustion was still there, the wounds and the weariness. But now there was something else, something Rennek had never seen in his father's eyes before. Hope. "My cubs," Vornek said, his voice thick with emotion. "What you have sent us, we have never seen anything like it. Our engineers, what few we have, they say it is possible. They say it might actually work." "Then build it, father," Talus said. "Build the strongholds, survive, we will try." Vornek paused. "I was wrong to think that learning human ways would make you weak. You have given us a weapon more powerful than any claw or fang. You have given us hope." The transmission ended, but this time it felt different. This time, there was a chance, but the cubs knew that blueprints alone would not win this war. Someone needed to guide the construction. Someone who understood both the designs and the Velrith people. Someone who could lead warriors to build instead of fight. Rennek looked at his sisters. They understood without words. They had spent months learning to create. Now it was time to go home and put that knowledge to use. "We are going back," Rennek announced. "We are going to help them build the strongholds ourselves." Do-Yoon started to object, but Hemi stopped him with a gentle hand on his arm. "They are right," she said. "This is their fight. Their people. Their future." She looked at the cubs with something like pride. "You are ready." The cubs prepared to leave. They were going home, into the heart of a siege, armed with nothing but knowledge and hope, and they were not going alone. The shuttle broke through the atmosphere in a ball of fire. Crystalline interceptors chased them, their weapons lighting up the sky with deadly energy. The pilot, a scarred Velrith warrior missing one ear, flew like a madman, dodging and weaving through the storm of attacks, Rennock gripped his seat and stared out the window. Below him, his homeworld burned. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were now smoking ruins. Forests where he had learned to hunt were blackened wastelands. The beautiful blue oceans were gray with ash. "We should not have come," Talus whispered, her voice barely audible over the roar of the engines. "We are going to die here." "Then we die building something that matters," Vora replied. Her voice was calm, stronger than anyone expected. The shy cub who had hidden behind her siblings was gone. In her place was someone new, forged in the workshops of the human station. The shuttle crashed more than landed, slamming into the ground near the capital city's last defensive line. The cubs stumbled out, coughing smoke, their fur singed by the heat. Around them, Velrith warriors were fighting and dying. Crystalline soldiers advanced with their glowing weapons. Unstoppable, merciless. A massive figure emerged from the smoke. Alpha Vornik, wounded and weary, but still standing. He saw his cubs and froze, unable to believe his eyes. "You came," he breathed. "You actually came." "We brought more than blueprints, Father," Rennock said. "We brought ourselves." There was no time for a proper reunion. Crystalline forces were pushing closer. The old walls were crumbling. If they did not start building soon, there would be nothing left to defend. Rennock took command of the first construction team. They were warriors, not builders, massive Velrith males who had spent their lives learning to destroy, not create. They looked at Rennock with skepticism. He was young. He was the Alpha's cub, soft from months spent with humans. What could he know about anything? "Listen to me," Rennock said, his voice carrying authority he did not know he had. "I know you think this is foolishness. Building walls while the enemy attacks. But those walls are the only thing that will keep us alive. I have studied with humans. I have learned their secrets. And I am going to teach you." An older warrior stepped forward. His name was Korath, a veteran of 100 battles. His body was covered in scars, and his eyes were hard with suspicion. "We do not take orders from cubs," Korath growled. "Especially cubs who ran away to hide with prey animals while we fought and bled." Rennock felt anger rise in his chest. The old Rennock would have attacked, would have tried to prove his dominance through violence. But he was not the old Rennock anymore. "You are right," he said quietly. "I was not here when you fought. I was not here when you bled. But I am here now. And I can help you survive if you let me." Korath sneered. "Prove it." A crystalline artillery strike hit nearby, shaking the ground. Part of the old defensive wall collapsed, crushing several warriors beneath the rubble. Screams filled the air. "There," Rennock pointed. "That wall failed because it was built solid, rigid. It could not absorb the energy of the blast, so it shattered. Watch." He grabbed construction materials and began working, his hands moving with speed and precision. Within minutes, he had built a small demonstration wall using the Fang protocol design. It was ugly, rough, nothing like the elegant structures humans built. But it was strong. "Hit it," Rennock said. Korath raised his plasma rifle and fired at full power. The blast hit the wall, and the wall flexed, absorbing the impact, redirecting the energy into the ground. When the smoke cleared, the wall was still standing. The warriors stared in disbelief. "This is what we build," Rennock said. "This is how we survive. Now are you going to help me, or are you going to stand there until the crystallines kill us all?" Korath was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he picked up a construction tool. "Show me what to do," he said. Across the city, Talus faced her own challenges. The power grid was a disaster. Generators were failing everywhere. Shields flickered and died, leaving entire districts exposed to attack. She worked under fire, crawling through wreckage, rerouting power lines, desperately trying to keep the lights on. A young warrior was assigned to protect her. A female named Senna, who was barely older than Talus herself. Senna carried a heavy rifle and watched the skies with nervous eyes. How can you concentrate with all this happening? Senna asked as another explosion rocked the building. I do not have a choice, Talus replied, her hands never stopping their work. If I stop, the shields fail. If the shields fail, everyone dies. So I do not stop. She found a critical junction box, its circuits fried by a power surge. The damage was severe. A human engineer would need hours to repair it. Talus did not have hours. She closed her eyes and remembered her lessons. Energy flows like water. Find the path of least resistance. Create new channels. Redirect, do not fight. Her hands moved on their own, following instinct and training combined. She bypassed the damaged circuits, created new connections from salvaged parts, and rerouted power through paths that should not have worked but somehow did. The shields flickered back to life. Senna stared at her with awe. How did you do that? I learned from humans, Talus said simply. Now come. There are more systems to repair. That night, Senna took a crystalline blast meant for Talus. The young warrior died in her arms, her last words a promise to watch over her, from whatever came after death. Talus wept. She had never lost someone before, not like this, not someone who died protecting her. The grief was overwhelming, crushing. She wanted to curl up and disappear, but she did not. She wiped her tears, picked up her tools, and went back to work. The humans had taught her that too. Grief is carried, not surrendered to. You honor the dead by continuing what they died for. And Vora discovered a strength she never knew she had. Her modular designs were meant to be simple, simple enough for untrained workers to understand. But she had not expected who those workers would be. The elderly came first. Old Velrith who could no longer fight, whose claws had dulled and whose bodies had weakened. They had been useless in the war, forgotten, waiting to die. Now Vora gave them purpose. These pieces connect like this, she explained, demonstrating with patient hands. See how the patterns match? When you line them up correctly, they lock together. You do not need strength. You need only patience and care. An ancient female named Mora, her fur white with age, assembled her first wall segment with shaking hands. When it clicked into place, she looked at Vora with tears in her eyes. I am helping, Mora whispered. For the first time in years, I am helping. Then the cubs came. Not Vornek's cubs, but the children of the city, young ones too small to fight but desperate to do something. Vora organized them into teams, teaching them her designs, turning construction into a game. Who can find the piece with the spiral pattern? She called out, and a dozen young voices answered, competing to be helpful. Even the wounded joined in. Warriors missing limbs, unable to hold weapons, could still hold building materials. They worked from their beds, assembling components that were then carried to the construction sites. Vora moved among them all, encouraging, teaching, inspiring. The shy cub who had hidden behind her siblings was now a leader. Her voice reached every corner of the city, broadcast through damaged communication systems, guiding the construction effort. Strength is not only in claws, she said, her words echoing through the streets. Strength is in building something worth defending. We are all strong today. The strongholds rose faster than anyone thought possible. Ugly, crude, patched together from wreckage and salvage, they were nothing like the elegant structures in the original blueprints. But they were strong. They were Velrith. Vornek fought alongside his cubs for the first time. He was old now, old by Vorith standards, and the war had taken much from him. But watching his children lead, watching them build, watching them become something he never imagined, he felt a pride deeper than any conquest had ever given him. I was wrong, he told Renok during a brief rest between attacks. I thought sending you to the humans would teach you their weakness. Instead, it taught you their strength. They are not weak, Father, Renok replied. They never were. They are simply strong in a different way. Then, against all odds, help arrived. A human shuttle broke through the crystalline blockade, its hull burning, its engines screaming. It crashed into the main construction site, and from its wreckage emerged familiar faces: Hemi, Minsik, Jian, and a dozen other engineers from the station. "You did not think we would let you have all the fun?" Hemi said, dusting ash from her clothes. Renek stared at them in disbelief. "You came. You actually came." "You are our students," Minsik said gruffly. "We do not abandon our students." Jian was already examining the nearest stronghold, her eyes bright with professional interest. "The modifications you made to the original design, they are brilliant. Crude but brilliant. We can improve them." Human and Velrith worked together, side by side, under the burning sky of a dying world. They built walls. They repaired shields. They created hope from nothing. And as the strongholds rose, the crystalline advance began to slow. But the final test was coming. The enemy was gathering their forces for one last massive assault. Everything depended on whether the strongholds would hold. The sky turned white with crystalline warships. Thousands of them, more than anyone had ever seen in one place, filled the heavens like a storm of living death. Their weapons began charging, casting an eerie glow across the ruined landscape. From his command post in the central stronghold, Renek watched the enemy gather. His heart pounded, but his hands were steady. Around him, warriors and engineers worked side by side, making final preparations. "All strongholds report ready," Talus said through the communication system. Her voice was calm, professional, hiding whatever fear she felt. "Power grid is stable. Shields at maximum capacity. Construction teams have completed the last defensive ring," Vora added. "All civilians are inside the shelters." Renek took a deep breath. This was it. Everything they had built, everything they had learned, everything they had become, it all came down to this moment. "All defenders," he broadcast, his voice reaching every stronghold across the planet. "The enemy comes with everything they have. They believe we are weak. They believe we will break. Show them what we have built. Show them what we have become." The crystalline assault began. Beams of concentrated energy rained down from the sky, striking the strongholds with devastating force. The first impacts shook the ground like earthquakes. Dust and debris filled the air. Warriors cried out in alarm, but the walls held. The Fang protocol design did exactly what it was meant to do. The walls flexed and bent, absorbing the energy, redirecting it into the ground. What would have shattered the old defenses barely scratched the new ones. From the command center, Hemi watched the readings with professional satisfaction. "The design is working. Stress levels within acceptable limits. But for how long?" Minsik asked grimly. "They have more firepower than we calculated." "Then we adapt," Renek said. "That is what we do." The crystalline ground forces advanced next. Thousands of crystal soldiers marched toward the strongholds, their bodies glowing with inner light. They moved without fear, without hesitation, unstoppable machines of war. Velrith warriors met them at the walls. Claws against crystal, fury against cold precision. The fighting was brutal. Warriors fell. Warriors died. But others took their place, and the strongholds held. Talus ran through the chaos, desperately keeping the power systems alive. Crystalline weapons targeted the generators, trying to bring down the shields. Every time one system failed, she rerouted power through another. Her hands were burned from hot wires. Her fur was singed from electrical sparks. But she did not stop. A crystalline soldier broke through the defensive line and came for her. She was not a warrior. She had no weapons. She should have been helpless. Instead, she grabbed the power conduit and jammed it into the creature's chest. Electricity arced through its body. The soldier shattered into 1,000 pieces. Talus stared at her hands, shocked at what she had done. Then she grabbed her tools and kept working. Across the battlefield, Vora's voice echoed through the communication systems. Calm, steady guiding. Sector 7, your wall segment is damaged. Replacement parts are in Storage Room 3. Teams 5 and 6, shift to support Sector 4. Medical teams, wounded, are gathering at Point 12. She was the heart of the defense, seeing what others missed, directing resources where they were needed most. The Shy Cub had become a commander. The battle raged for hours. Day became night. Night became day again. The crystalline forces kept coming, waves upon waves of glowing soldiers and devastating weapons. The strongholds crumbled in places, were repaired. Crumbled again. Then the enemy breached the central stronghold. Crystalline soldiers poured through a collapsed wall section, their weapons cutting down defenders. Renok saw them coming and knew there was no time to wait for reinforcements. He grabbed the plasma welder from a nearby workbench. It was a tool, not a weapon, but it was what he had. "With me!" he shouted, and a dozen warriors followed him into the breach. The fighting was desperate. Renok swung the welder like a club, its cutting flame slicing through crystal bodies. He fought not like the warrior he had been raised to become, but like the engineer he had become. Every movement was calculated. Every action had purpose. A crystalline commander faced him, a massive creature twice his size. Its weapon charged, glowing with deadly light. Renok did not retreat. He remembered what Minsik had taught him about material stress points. Even crystal had weaknesses if you knew where to look. He dodged the first attack, rolled under the second, and jammed his welder into the thin joint between the commander's arm and body. The creature screamed, a sound like shattering glass, and collapsed. The breach was sealed. The stronghold held dot as the second day dawned. Something changed. The crystalline attacks began to slow. Their endless waves became less endless. Their perfect coordination started to falter. "They are running out of forces," Jian said in disbelief, studying the tactical displays. "They committed everything to this assault. They expected to crush us quickly. They did not plan for a long battle. Because no one has ever survived this long against them," Minsik said quietly. Vornak stood at the window, watching the enemy retreat. His body was covered in wounds, his armor shattered, but his eyes burned with triumph. "We are still standing," he breathed. "By the ancestors, we are still standing." The crystalline hegemony withdrew. Not defeated, not destroyed, but turned back. They would return someday, but not today. Today, the Velroth survived. In the aftermath, survivors emerged from the strongholds. They looked at the walls that had protected them, the ugly, crude, magnificent walls, and many of them wept. They had faced extinction and survived. Not through conquest, not through destruction, but through creation. Vornak called a gathering in the ruins of the capital square. Every Velroth who could walk came to hear him speak. Human engineers stood among them, dirty and exhausted, but alive. "For 10,000 years, we measured strength by what we could destroy," Vornak said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "Today, we learned a different lesson. True strength is what we can build, what we can protect, what we can create." He turned to face his cubs. "My children went to the humans as frightened cubs. They returned as something greater than I could have imagined. They are not just warriors. They are builders. They are the future of our people." Renok, Talus, and Vora stood with their human teachers. Hemi's hand rested on Renok's shoulder. Jian smiled at Talus with pride. Minsik nodded at Vora with respect. "We have spent our history alone," Vornak continued. "Taking from others, trusting no one. That ends today. These humans came to help us when they did not have to. They risked their lives for strangers. They taught our children. They fought beside our warriors." He walked to Doyen, who had arrived with the second wave of human volunteers and had worked tirelessly throughout the battle. "I offer alliance," Vornak said. "Not conquest. Not dominance. Partnership. Your knowledge and our strength. Together." Dohin considered the offer. Around him, the weight of history shifted. Two species, one known for war and one known for creation, standing at the edge of something new. "We accept," Doyun said. The crowd erupted in cheers. Velrith and human voices mixed together, a sound that had never been heard before in all the galaxy. Years passed. The alliance flourished. Human engineers helped the Velrith rebuild their shattered world. Velrith's strength protected human expeditions into dangerous space. Trade routes opened. Knowledge was shared. Children of both species grew up knowing each other as friends, not strangers. A new academy was built on Velrith soil, designed by cubs who were now masters. It was a beautiful structure, combining human precision with Velrith artistry. Students from across the galaxy came to study there. One morning, a young Velrith sat in a classroom, her fur still fluffy with youth. Beside her sat a young human, nervous but excited. They were the newest students, beginning their journey. An instructor entered the room. She was Velrith, tall and graceful, with patterns on her fur that marked her as someone special. Her name was Vera, and she was one of the Academy's founders. "Welcome," she said warmly. "I know you are nervous. I know this is all strange and new. But I promise you, by the time you leave this place, you will have learned something that will stay with you forever." The young Velrith raised her hand. "What is the first lesson?" Vora smiled. It was the same question she had silently asked herself so many years ago. When she first arrived at a human station as a frightened cub, she walked to a workbench and picked up a pair of safety goggles, then a welding torch. She handed them to the young students. "First lesson," she said. "Fire does not care how sharp your claws are. Put these on." The young Velrith and the young human looked at each other, then at the goggles. They were strange, designed for faces different from their own. They looked a little ridiculous, but they put them on anyway, and somewhere, in the great beyond, Alpha Vornak watched his grandchildren begin their own journey. He smiled, knowing that what his cubs had built would last far longer than any conquest. This was the legacy of the Velrith. Not the worlds they had taken, but the world they had learned to build. And it had all started with 3 frightened cubs, a pair of safety goggles, and a human who refused to be afraid.